Well, we saw it today. We saw it today. Old Pistol Pete Hegseth. He assembled all of our nation's military top brass in one room and let them have it, right? Gave them the new standard. There is a new standard coming to our nation's military. You know what? It's not even really new. We're bringing back some of the old school standards to build our military force to be a lethal, deadly, destructive military force. And I support it. Say what you want about Pete Hegseth, say what you want about President Trump, say what you want about any of them. But I think that the one thing that we collectively can come together on is the idea that our nation's military needs to be the strongest, most lethal, most badass military force on the planet. And the way that we get there is through strict standards and no bullshit. No, as he calls it, no debris, no more woke crap, no DEI, no men in dresses, none of that stuff. No more long hair, no more beards, no more tiptoeing around complainers and weak individuals that have decided to join the military. And then we're going to get rid of people who can't meet the standard, who don't bring value to their unit, that do not bring value to our ability as a nation to be the most destructive, lethal force on the planet. Because it may be more of a question of when and not if we find ourselves in a situation where that's exactly what's needed. And I don't know that anybody can disagree with the idea or the fact that this world is becoming even more polarized. It's becoming even more dangerous. People all over the world are becoming way more bold. Not just the street dwellers, not just the common everyday person, but people who have power, people in high positions. And it's very clear that the state of our military force has diminished. The lethality of our military force has diminished. And I don't know about you, but I think that if we were all being honest and we assembled a room of 5, 10, 100, 2, 3 veterans and or maybe even currently serving soldiers, I think that a very high percentage of them would be very nervous for us to be heading into any kind of conflict at this point. I mean, Mr. Hegseth talked a lot about standards. He talked a lot about what is not acceptable any longer. And he talked about times when it wasn't acceptable before. Changes like this had been made prior to World War II, he was talking about. And the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs made it a point to make changes to make our military more lethal, more powerful. And in return, more respected, more feared. And I can understand that many people in this country don't get it. They don't understand why it needs to be that way. And the truth is very simple, folks. Our enemies, when and if they show their faces, I think that we could argue that they already are. When and if those things happen and war comes to our door, people who naysay this type of leadership and these types of changes are people that just don't understand. They don't understand what the dark side of humanity really looks like. They don't know. Well, I mean, they don't know what they don't know, but they don't know why war is hell. Yeah, we can hear veterans tell their stories. We can watch movies. We can listen to conversations, even take part in conversations about war and things that are scary, that are brutal, that are violent. But until you've lived in that world, you have no idea. And a lot of people think that they do. And a lot of people you'll hear talk about how they would do this, that, and the other thing if they were in this situation or that situation. Well, shit, I would have done blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't know if you would have. None of those things work out the way you plan them. when shit hits the fan, your plan is pretty much null and void unless you rehearse and practice as a team and you trust each other and you do it so many times that it creates a muscle memory that you will never ever the rest of your life forget. That's what it takes. And this coming from, I mean, truth be told, folks, I'm not a universal soldier. I'm not a wonder warrior. I'm not a special forces operator. I'm just a getting old fat guy that served in the United States, the U.S. Army Infantry for 19-ish years, 18 years and 10 months. That's it. But I do have the life experience of being in combat. I do have the life experience of watching this seemingly downfall of our lethality in our military. It was happening when I was in. It got real bad after I left. Thank God I got out when I did. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people who watch back Pete Hegseth's speech, and they're going to criticize him and say he's a warmonger or some stupid shit like that. But again, these are people who don't understand. They don't know. It's real easy. It's real easy to listen to a speech, watch a video, watch a movie, take part in a conversation, and formulate your opinion. Formulate what you think you would do, your plan, what it might be. When you get into these situations, or you find yourself in the military, and then you find yourself in a forward area, and then you find yourself in this situation where bullets are flying and roadside bombs are going off and RPGs are skipping off the road and people are screaming and yelling and it's chaos. And then at that point, everything you thought that you might do, everything that you thought you might feel, and everything you thought you might think is different than what you planned. Well, and then what are you going to do? When that happens, what are you going to do? And so now that the Secretary of War gets out in front of the nation, in front of the world, and talks to the leaders of our whole military, these are the men and women in this room. These were the men and women who are in charge of everybody. Now, all of them have their units and their commands and all that stuff, but everybody who has anything to say about everything that any soldier does or thinks or whatever was in that room. Now, there's not one leader that can say that they weren't told, that cannot say that they weren't informed. And the world now also knows that this is our plan of action. This is our direction. He talked about basic training becoming hard again, which to me was music to my ears. And I agree with him. I think that basic training is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to make you want to quit. It's supposed to make you want to give up. And that part has been lost. Now, I'm sure that there's many people that would say back when I went through basic training in 2002 that, it was sissified. It wasn't hard. They couldn't beat you up. They couldn't break your fingers. They couldn't throw you in the dirt. They couldn't do all of these things. And some of that's true. Boy, I can tell you that we were super intimidated by the men who were training us. We were intimidated and had a healthy fear of the men who were tearing us down to the studs to rebuild us in the image of the United States Army. And in our case, because our drill sergeants were all infantrymen with combat experience, they built us in the image of the United States Army Infantry. And they told us about why things are hard. Yeah, the first few weeks, I would say the first four weeks for sure were, they were something. But again, every week it got a little bit easier. I don't want to say they lightened up on us because I don't believe that they did. But when you learn the system, when you learn how to operate within the structure that basic training provided, it became a lot easier. Most of us grew to like it. I never would have thought in a million years at that age in my life that I'd have been real excited about waking up at 4:30 in the morning and by 5:10 going for a 5 or 6 mile run. But by the beginning of the end of basic training, the last 3 weeks, I was up at 4:15. Did all my shit shower and shave and all that other crap. Had my PT uniform on and my shoes laced up, and still had 5 minutes to meander down the formation. They break you down and build you back. They build you back up in a way that most people, and maybe just people, I mean, in my experience, in a way I never thought possible. Now, what I will say all these years later is that there are many things that I learned in the military that I don't practice anymore. Like shaving my face every day, for example, and keeping a high and tight. I don't necessarily make my bed every day. Some of those things. But what it did teach me, what I did retain, was the warfighter characteristics that was seemingly beat into us, and nobody got beat up, no one got physically assaulted, but beat into us by work and expectation and standards. And I gotta say, I commend Pete Hegseth for his direction. I commend him for being a person that is going to make a change and be staunch in it. And you know what? If at the end of the day, he turns out to be wrong about all of this stuff, which I personally don't think that he will. I think that this is a very good direction for our nation's military to go. But even if he proves to be wrong about all or any of this, I still give him credit for making a decision, selecting a path as a leader, saying this is how it's going to be. If you don't like it, thank you for your service. It's time for you to move on, and keeping to the path. Stay the course. You know, he spouted off a quote that I actually have tattooed on my arm that said, "Those who desire peace prepare for war." And he made a very good point. The people that have made the decision, the men and women in our society that have made the decision to sacrifice everything, strap on a pair of boots, put on this uniform, grab a rifle, and stand a post. These are the people that really desire peace. Without being prepared to defend your peace, there is no peace. There can't be. So for those of us who are not willing to do whatever it takes to defend this place and provide peace to the American people that, as he said, rightfully depend on us to provide, without those people, we will fall, because there is no standard. Our enemies don't have a standard. People that mean to do us harm, whether they're foreign or domestic, they do not have a standard. They don't have a conscience. They don't have a moral compass. And our nation's military need to be prepared to wipe them off the face of the planet at all costs. Given all of those of war, given rules of engagement that aren't crippling and handcuffing our soldiers, let them defend this place. Let them defend our seemingly withering away peace, what we have left, in hopes that maybe we can build it back up. We can build this country back up to being the greatest country in the world. I think that we have a long way to go. I mean, a lot of it is military readiness and force, but all the other things that go along with it. Where do our kids rank in education? Where do our industries rank on the world stage? Any of them? Gas, electronics, groceries, eggs? Where do we rank on the world stage? Natural resources, whatever it is that you wanna to measure. I'm guessing if we had a list of 20 of the most important things that are ranked by whoever ranks them in the world, I bet you America's not on the top of the list for most of them. We already know that the ones that are pretty damn important, like education, for example, we're not even close. Not even close. And so if we can't be world leaders in things like ensuring that the generation that is coming next and then the generation after that aren't extremely well educated and set up to be the next world leaders, the next leaders of this country, well, we better be pretty damn good at something. I mean, America's 2-0 in world wars. So let's keep that energy at least. Let's stay on top of the shit pile for being the most lethal, the most intimidating, the most feared military force on the planet. Because despite what he says, I don't know that we are right now at this point. And I think that if we do things like he's saying and let our leaders all the way down to the lowest level get back to old school standards, accountability, no bullshit, we'll be an extremely strong military force. But we also have to have leadership that allow the soldiers to use the tools to get the job done. Because I'll tell you what, there are more than enough soldiers in the ranks of all of our branches of service, I believe, that are ready, willing, and able to demolish an enemy at any time it's necessary. But they have to be allowed to do that when the situation dictates. I don't know that we can keep any of these old policies, and we're not going to, so it's not even a question. But for the naysayers out there, I don't know what argument they can make to keep up these woke and DEI policies, all this craziness. And quite frankly, the government has a whole lot of work to do to rebuild trust in Americans that may want to serve in the military. I mean, look how soldiers were treated when we had a whole slew of them that were saying, I will absolutely not take these shots, the vaccine. Okay, you don't want to take it? Pack your shit, you're out. How many good soldiers did our branches of service lose? How many good people bounced out because they were not going to be told to put some experimental syrup in their arm? Not happening. I never did it. When it first came about, I told my platoon sergeant and our first sergeant, I got to go take a dump. And I left, and then I went and walked in the locker room and found a way to avoid the shot. But I also didn't want all the bullshit that came along with saying no. So I made up a reason to not be there. Well, maybe I'll make it there next month. Maybe next time I'll get in there. But they just clean sweep all these people out. And we lost a ton of soldiers with combat experience. We lost good leaders. We lost people that can take and help mold the next generation of warfighters that come in as privates. All that experience just walked away. And as we know, from the longest war in our nation's history, we had a whole lot of men and women with a whole lot of some deploying 5, 6, and not just combat MOSs, not just combat soldiers, but experienced soldiers and everything else, logistics and admin, maintenance, mechanics, all of these things, people that have a lot of experience working with all of these military and DoD systems, how to fix this equipment, how to make sure that our troops are being paid on time, and there's processes and techniques and things and all of this stuff. Good medical people, doctors and dentists and all kinds of shit. Supply people. You know, it's also a huge misconception that everybody in the military is a combat soldier. Now, what Pete Hegseth did say is that everybody who wears a uniform will be proficient with a weapon. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Everybody should know how to use a weapon, a rifle, a pistol, something, a weapon of war, if that's what you want to call it, to defend themselves, their battle buddy, or go out and complete a mission that they're given. Everybody should know how to do that. But there are a whole lot of people in the military that their number one responsibility is not combat. I can tell you for sure one thing to have in a unit: if you have a subpar supply person, for example, your readiness, your lethality as a combat unit is diminished. If your equipment isn't working properly, If your motor pool or your mechanics, for example, don't have the proper parts, they don't have the proper supplies to make sure that they can fix our vehicles and our tanks and our generators and whatever else, if they don't have the proper tools to do their job, it impacts the job of the combat soldier greatly. And so, as we've talked about before, one good thing to keep in mind through any of this stuff is that for every one combat soldier, there's 6 or 7 people who do other jobs that need to do their job correctly and accurately for the combat soldier to be as effective as possible. And so that's what he's talking about. Across the board, we need to make sure that our military gets to a spot where our lethality is at all-time highs. Our readiness is at all-time highs, because you, the people of America, me, our families, our kids, our grandkids, our friends, our neighbors, our spouses, our parents, everybody depends on the United States military doing the job that they're there to do. That's why we have a military, to defend this place. And when we need to go on offense and take the fight to an enemy, our military force needs to be able to deploy and advance on an enemy with complete and utter destruction. That's just how it works. And people don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree. But I can guarantee you, I will promise you, when the evil that lurks in the dark comes to your door, God forbid it does, but when and if it does, you will see. You will know, you'll learn. So my advice personally to people is get yourself prepared. Get yourself in a mindset that you will defend yourself, your family, your children, your spouse, your community, whatever it is, at all costs. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go out as vigilantes, right? Where they don't have to all be modern day Batman and go out and hunt for these people and these things. But every now and then, the darkness will find its way to the innocent people. And I think it's been happening a lot more often nowadays than it has in the past. And if you're not ready, you're going to get eaten. You're going to feel it, and it ain't going to feel good. And so in the same tone, our military needs to be just as prepared. We all depend on it. Our peace, our livelihoods, all of these things depend on having a strong military. And he was right. He was talking about how in some circles, in some places, maybe it's not meant to be understood. Maybe people like us aren't meant to roll in some social circles. Maybe we're not built to be touchy-feely people. Those of us who get called to service, maybe he's right. We are the type of people that are enthused and energized by doing one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, fighting our nation's enemies. Inside our borders, if necessary, but certainly outside our borders. Anything or anybody that threatens this community, this nation, needs to be met with extreme violence of action. Because not only do we want to get it over with quick, but we also want it to set a tone. When things like that happen, the whole world is watching. And taking out these enemies and these threats as fast and as violently as possible, hopefully will deter the next set of shitbags, whoever they may be, from trying to do the same thing. And that's what I'm talking about. In those instances, when that darkness creeps up to the door, these are the types of people doing the types of things that you believe, many people believe, are unthinkable, unspeakable. But then when it happens to them, or they're affected directly by some of this shit, then they wanna have the conversation. Then they're a little more okay with it, if not completely okay with it. I think that this is an exciting direction for our military to be going. He talked about the height and weight standards, the grooming standards, the professional appearance, revamping the inspector general, the IG process, so that people who are in the military and they just like to complain because they feel like they're being discriminated against, or they feel like they're this or that or the other thing. It's all gone. It's all out of here. Bullshit. No more. And for those of you who have served or who may be currently serving, one of the coolest announcements, in my opinion, that he made was that there's going to be a severe reduction in mandatory training. No more SSD, no more death by PowerPoint. Get out and train on your weapon systems. Get out and train on your equipment. And if you're not training on it, you better be maintaining it. We are going to be a military that is ready at any time, anywhere, land, air, or sea, anywhere, to advance on an enemy and take them out with extreme speed and extreme violence of action. Destroy them. Kill them all. That's what war is about. And these are the people, folks, that live amongst you in your communities. You have battle-hardened warriors in your communities. And at no time should that be a negative thing. Hopefully, there are veterans in communities that, and I understand not everybody can, not everyone's willing, not everyone will be a pillar in their community, but understand that you have people around you that just want to live in peace. I can tell you, for me, for example, all of that chaos, all of that violence, all of that death and destruction and all of that shit, if we had to go back to it, if we had to strap on some body armor and pick up a rifle and go fight to defend our communities, to defend my family, you wouldn't even have to ask. But I don't wanna have to do any of that. I feel like I've served my time. I've done my time. And I think that there are so many other veterans in our communities that feel the same way. Like, if we have to, if we get to a point in this country where the woke mob had made it so that nobody was willing or able to fight, and all of us old son of a bitches had to go into our gun safes and dust off the old rifle and defend this place at all costs, we'll do it. But we don't want to. And I think that that's the difference maker. That's the difference maker that people just don't understand. You hear a lot of conversation about why people sit stagnant in their communities. People who have had a life or career in service, military, law enforcement, EMS, any first responders of any sort, because that shit takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on your mental health, for sure, your body, internally and externally. It takes a toll on you. And so when your time is done, it is a situation where you never forget. And for many people, you never can forget, because you have to live with it every day. You got to live with the physical pain. You got to you have to live with the mental health issues. And so many people do it with grace, because there's no other choice. We're not going to fall, not willingly, but just know that there are people in your community that are battle-hardened warriors. And when and if the situation dictates, I'm fairly certain that a pretty large number of them will pick up arms to defend their home, to defend their community. But not just violence, not just war and shooting and blowing up and all that, but when floods come and natural disasters come, or there's some tragedy in the neighborhood or in the community, usually you will find somebody involved who has some kind of military service. And those experiences learned in the military through whatever job are valuable to that situation, to that community. Just because many of us get up, we go to work, get on our motorcycles or get in our boats and hang out on the weekends, or hike or do whatever, or just sit at home and watch 9 hours of football on Saturday and 8 hours of football on Sunday. It doesn't mean that they're not willing and able to do what it takes. And I can't say the same for generations that came after us, the current generation, who are now young in society, young in the military, young in the workforce, young in our communities. The direction that our country has taken in the last 6, 7, 8 years has completely uprooted, in my opinion, the way that we move about our communities, the way that we hold people accountable, just the way that we operate. It's a whole lot more sissified, if you will. There's a whole lot less consequences for your actions. There's a whole lot less accountability happening all over the place. I mean, we talked about a few of them just a couple weeks ago, like that Mohammed Bakar kid in Rochester, Minnesota, who raped the kids and will do no jail time. Won't even have to register as a sex offender. And why? Because he chose to take some plea deal that says, well, I'm going to plead guilty, but I'm going to maintain my innocence. I'll say I did it, but I didn't, even though he was found guilty. And so they gave him some deal to say you did it, even if you're going to maintain that you didn't. And if you do that, we won't put you in jail. You don't ever have to let anybody know that you raped 2 kids. Whatever community you go to and live in from here on out, you don't have to tell them. You can live by schools. You can live by churches. You can go into those places, even though you're a predator. Those are the types of things that really grind my gears, man. I can't believe that we've gotten to a place where that type of shit goes down. And then that nobody holds this person accountable because he's willing to say, I did it, but I didn't. Whoever that judge is, whoever that prosecuting team is, just put a whole community in danger. And nobody seems to give a shit. Except for, I bet you, except for the families of those 2 little girls. And anybody close to them who knows them. Hopefully there's people in that community raising a ruckus about it and complaining and going to the steps of the courthouse every day and asking what the fuck is going on. Hold them accountable. Hold people accountable for the atrocities that they commit. Maybe it's time to get medieval and go back to this eye for an eye standard. But that's a little insensitive. It's too insensitive. It's gruesome. We can't do that. We got basic human rights and due process and all this other bullshit. And meanwhile, all of the people across this land who have been victimized got no due process. No one cares about their human rights, at least not in places where people can do anything about it. That's actually impactful. That does something that works. Anyway, my whole intent for today's show was to talk about Pete Hegseth and his speech and the standards that he is looking to bring back to our military to make it the strongest fighting force in the world. That's feared and that is intimidating, but yet respected. That's the type of military force that will keep our country safe. And if needed, if called upon, if put in our laps, a military force that will handle business anywhere on this planet. And do it, as we said before, with extreme speed and violence of action. Extreme violence, because that's what wins war. That's what stops the people who show up in front of you that want to kill you. They want to see you die. They want to see you bleed out. They want to see you obliterated. And we can't have that happen. We need to be more violent. We need to be more fierce and take them a fight that they just can't compete with. It's too overwhelming. And if you're a person that has never lived it and doesn't think about or even consider putting yourself in a place to potentially live it, then you will never understand. But maybe it's helpful to know that there are people out there that are willing to live it. There are people out there that are willing to run towards the gunfire. There are people who are willing to go to wherever it needs to be on this planet to take the fight to our enemies and kill them because they want to kill us. The men and women who strap up a uniform and boots and grab a rifle and say, sleep easy, we got this. These are the people that live up to the words that are tatted on my arm. Those who desire peace shall prepare for war, because without being prepared and without having to defend there is no peace. And I hope and I pray that the people who don't know don't ever really have to find out. I just wish that sometimes they would just nod their head in some sort of gratitude and go about their day. Go on home, have a Capri Sun and some string cheese, and do whatever it is you do. And that's okay. Because the men and women that want to stand a post, the men and women that want to bring the fight to our enemies, they're out there. And now they're going to have to live and operate at a new standard, a new normal that hopefully, seemingly, will bring our military back to the fighting force that is feared by people all over the world, that is respected by people all over the world. I think that's a pretty good goal. I think it's a pretty good position to try to be in. Just think about how much more comfy your blanket of freedom will be when we're a badass, supersized can of whoop ass, and our soldiers get the ability and the opportunity to show the world why we are the most lethal. But we got to get there first. Got to build it, because it got tore down. Quite a bit of it got tore down. So hopefully it works. Like I said, I believe that Mr. Hegseth will get all kinds of blowback, and they'll be talking shit about him for the next month. But the people who know, they understand. Most people probably agree. Maybe not with everything, but if we're going to live in peace, and if we're going to have places that we can have our citizens, we can have Americans roam around, live free and happy, that's the goal. That is the goal. So in the event of just blathering on, I'm gonna let you go. I don't want to keep you too long. If you're a person that stuck around and watched the whole thing, thanks. Sometimes I get down rabbit trails, but I think that it's been said. Now we're beating the dead horse. Speed and violence of action is what we need. Extreme speed and extreme violence of action, and we're going to get back there. There's a new standard. Stay tuned. Hopefully we don't get into a place where we have to showcase it to the world, how lethal we are and how violent we can be. Hopefully not, but we better be prepared for it. Good night.